there's a huge opportunity to fundamentally change the economy of Washington by improving transportation. And most of you know that I care an awful lot about the rural economy. And I have voted for gas tax packages in the past because I and direct them to things that will actually accomplish something in the environment. First of all, there's enough money there to totally clean up Puget Sound. And one of the reasons Puget Sound is not as clean as it should be is because almost every city that is on the Puget Sound doesn't have sufficient wastewater handling capacity. And there is enough money here to fix those problems. So when we have a big storm, we're not going to be polluting Puget Sound and killing fish. The next thing that she does is she recognizes that the biggest impact on carbon that is feasible in Washington is, first of all, fully fund all of the necessary forest practices to have the healthiest possible forest.
He's got it under control, so I will begin. Thank you so much, Yelm City Council, for this opportunity to be with you tonight. I'm looking forward to when you guys are all back in your chamber and we can all meet. Oh, no, still got stuff going on here, guys. There we go. All right. And when we can all be back together. Before I start, I want to thank Mayor Foster for his many years of service to the city of Yelm as he gets ready to retire. And I want to congratulate incoming Mayor DePinto for his recent win. And I look forward to working with him in his new capacity as the mayor of Yelm come January. So, well, as my seatmate Rep. Wilcox indicated, we have a lot of things that we've been doing. And one of the common themes that you're going to take away from this is that you can either be reactive or proactive. And a lot of times in our position, the minority, we're very reactive. We have to react to what is being put forth. And I don't typically operate that way. I like to be proactive. I like to look at solutions, put them out there, try to find pathways of collaboration where we can work together. It's not always easy on multiple fronts, but I think that is what the people want right now. The people want collaboration. They want solutions. They're tired of talk. They're tired of dealing with the stuff. And I think that what we're doing is we're showing that there is a pathway. Before I talk about transportation, I want to hit on a couple other things that are priorities that you will hear about. It's a short session. It's going to be difficult to get a lot of things done. It's a short session in an election year. So, you know, those two things combined, plus the fact that we will be semi-virtual again, limited capacity, all the stuff that goes along with that, which makes it very difficult to do the job that we have in front of us. I am still working in a lead capacity on housing issues. As was referenced, we heard that the majority is going to be putting forth some really incredible bills and solutions about supply and demand and regulatory, all of which sound very similar to bills that I've been proposing for the last 6 years. So I'm excited. System run. And so about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, the majority embarked on a journey that is not typical in the realm of transportation, and that is a partisan transportation revenue package. Everything up until this point has always been bipartisan. As Rep. Wilcox said, he voted for the last one, which was Connecting Washington in 2015, which provided solutions and projects, including the Yelm bypass, and was negotiated in a bipartisan manner. The one that was presented to us was not. It was a list of projects. It was a list of taxes and fees, anywhere from a 21-cent gas tax, 27-cent gas tax. I mean, it was a lot of money. And I looked at it and said, there's got to be a better way. We have been doing the same thing for years. We keep relying on diminishing revenue source in our gas tax and fees. And then we go back to the people and say, hey, we need more money. The budgets don't work that way. The other budgets don't work that way. We look at the revenue, we prioritize, we appropriate, we do what needs to be done. So for the last 6 months plus, I have been working with some incredible staff and stakeholders and looking at a better way to do it. And that is why I proposed and dropped the bills around the REAL plan, which is reprioritizing existing appropriations for longevity. And what that means is that we have tax revenue coming into the state of Washington like we have never seen. And it's not just this year, it has been consistent over the last 10 plus years, double-digit increases in our revenue. And as far as I'm concerned, tax revenue is tax revenue. What the people are paying in the state of Washington should be prioritized to run the state of Washington. That's what we expect as taxpayers. And I think transportation should be a priority. I think it should be a high priority. You cannot have the economy that we have today if you cannot move goods and people throughout our state reliably, safely. So we took a look at what we could do. And what my proposal is based on two primary bills. As a matter of fact, they just dropped yesterday. If you go to the legislative website, I'll spare all the details, but you can go there, anybody, and find them. HB 1603 and 1604. House Bill 1603 is what I call the REAL Act. And this is a bill that looks at various programs within the transportation budget that are currently funded in the transportation budget through the gas tax and other fees that are generated that can be paid for out of the operating budget. Now, these are programs that are safe streets to schools, regional mobility grants, our Amtrak service, fish culverts, other things that have a nexus with providing services, but not necessarily a nexus with drivers paying taxes to support that. But the general population supports those services. So there is a great tie-in to be able to find those dollars, which exist, in the operating budget to pay for them. The second bill, HB 1604, is my good colleague, Representative McEwen, has proposed this for several years. It's not a new idea. It's something that we've been talking about, but it's something that we've made a little more robust this time around. And that is to take the sales tax that's generated from the sale of new automobiles in Washington State, and that money is dedicated to transportation, but more so, it is dedicated to maintenance and preservation. Now, maintenance and preservation, we've been told by the Secretary of Transportation, there's about a $1 billion backlog every year. We don't have enough money to maintain our current infrastructure. And when you think about maintenance and preservation, this is also projects. These are bridges, these are roads, these are things that need to be rebuilt throughout the entirety of our state. By transferring those sales tax dollars, it generates about $1 billion a year. We need $1 billion, it generates $1 billion, or $2 billion of biennium. The totality of the proposal that I'm working on is about $3.25 billion in revenue to the transportation budget. But the best thing that it does is it takes and relieves and frees up additional monies, hundreds of millions of dollars within the transportation budget as it exists, to build roundabouts, to build things that we need to build, to take care of infrastructure, to take care of things that help with our economic development, to make sure our state patrol is funded, to deal with our ferry system, to deal with all sorts of things without raising taxes. You see, we don't need to raise taxes right now. If you've been to the gas pump lately, which we all have, we're paying about $4.25 a gallon now for gas. Policies that were passed this last legislative cycle, low carbon fuel standard and the aforementioned cap and invest, cap and trade, are going to increase the cost of gas for the consumer of Washington State on average 60 cents to $1 a gallon in the next year, over and above what we're already paying today. What we're paying today is not gas tax increases. It is market-driven influence. So we all know this. When the cost of a barrel of oil goes up and production goes down, supply and demand, right? It gets expensive. I was in California, visiting my son here a couple months ago. I paid $5.35 a gallon gas. California has low carbon fuel standard and was the first state in the union to do that. Oregon followed and Washington just did. So these are policies that have a direct impact on the costs that our constituents are paying. So is this the time to go back and ask them for more money, raising the gas tax in order to do a project list? I don't think so. So I'm proposing a common sense, collaborative approach to solve this problem. And it's gaining traction, it's gaining momentum, it's gaining support bipartisan from stakeholders. Everybody that hears this has been talking to me, reaching out to me and talking about it. There are several other bills, about another 5 bills that you'll see when you go to the website on it, that are some additional policies that deal with some reforms, deal with some collective bargaining with regards to getting at the employment issue, the workforce issue with the ferry system, some other things with regards to lane departure, some safety issues that can be taken care of. These are good bills, and they're just the beginning, because this is the platform that establishes us to look further into how we reimagine and redo the budget. And I'll tell you, one of the key components in my REAL Act, it establishes a budget cabinet between the operating budget and the transportation budget, which should be common sense, no brainer, right? This is something that has never been done, where the budget leads from both parties and both chambers meet and discuss the interaction between the budget with the taxpayers' dollars that are coming into the state of Washington. This is how you get around one person saying, well, oh, Rep. Barkus, you can't do that because if you take this money, you're going to take it away from the elderly or schools or something else. It's not true. It's not accurate. And when a budget cabinet works together, you say, well, show me that. And how do we work around that to make sure it's not going to impact that? Now, we have a one-time opportunity, which we have never seen in the state, when we come back here in January with almost $9 billion in surplus in revenue, additional non-appropriated, not allocated money that we didn't have when we left back in April, whatever it was, when we left. So people say, well, this is one time and your plan is only one time. And what'll it mean down the future? No, because most of my plan doesn't get enacted until 2025 because we have a budget outlook that we have to honor. But it takes into consideration this funding. And if you plan accordingly, that funding will be available over the course of time as we move forward. Plus, you account for it as you budget in the general operating budget. So it is about priorities. Do we need another program? Do we need another something else that's going to create more cost and more whatever for the state? I would say no. I would say that we need to look at the priorities of the state of Washington, and transportation should be high on that list. You see, you can't have the economy that we all experience today without good transportation. You know this in Yelm more than most, right? How hard is it to get through Yelm? How hard is it? All the things that we've been talking about. And I'll tell you, you have to look at that because everything that happens in our economy, the generation of sales tax and property tax and excise tax when we build new homes and all the things that go on in our business taxes come because transportation allows for the movement of goods and services and people. So that nexus is there. And this is an approach that hasn't been talked about in what I'm hearing 30, 40 years, but the time is now. And so I'm hoping to garner a lot of support. I've shared it with the chair of transportation. We are working together. We'll see how it goes. Working from the minority position is a little different, but I think with the right support from stakeholders, that the message will be loud and clear that this is something that we should consider, and we should not put it in a category of R or D. And just because a Republican brings forth a solution, that should not be considered because we're not in the majority. And that's why I did this. Reactive or proactive? Let's be proactive. Let's take and put forth some real solutions. That's what this does. Now, in closing, the Yelm bypass. It's still moving forward. I was so excited back when I ran in 2018 because I campaigned on the fact that we were able to get the money advanced to get this project moving. But unfortunately, a little thing happens in the legislature. Every year that we get together, we enact more policy. And then more policy goes to a lot of agencies which are allowed to write more rules. And whether that's stormwater, whether that's gophers, whether that's whatever, those things have an impact on how we deliver the projects. And they cause delays. And this project has had delays. There were more mitigating factors environmentally because of the prairie that they had to address. And then there was a discovery of a potential cultural site that has Native American ramifications, and policy was put into place that anytime you discover anything, if it has the potential, everything stops until the proper people are brought in to determine whether it is a significant site. And so those two combine to delay things. But my last check with that it is moving forward. We'll probably see things start towards the end of 22 and into 23. The money is there. It is not a financial issue. The money has been secured for this project. It's sitting there. They've tried to scoop it up. I won't let them because I want to make sure this gets done. And to Rep. Wilcox's point about the roundabouts, what was being referred to is there is a big project right now with regards to the Nisqually River, the bridges there, what they call the Mounts Road I-5 project. This is a project that's gaining steam. This is one that I have been supporting because it is significant. But the work that was done a couple of years ago that we funded looked at the entirety of the system in a regional approach, because you cannot look at one piece. You must look at I-5. You have to look at 507, 510, all 702, Mountain Highway, everything that is regional. And we saw what happened 4 years ago when the train derailed almost this time 4 years ago, what the impact was on the transportation area. And so these roundabouts are critical. So them pulling it apart, they don't want to put it into the cost of this one particular thing, but we're not going to let them separate it out of the regional approach that was already established and as a solution base. These are important and can be done. And when you think of the cost, right, $19 million, a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it comes down to priorities, right? Do we not have 19 million? In my plan, we do. We have 19 million. Now it's a matter of getting it done, right? Getting it scheduled, getting it done, and making sure these things happen. So I'm excited about it. I really, we put a ton of time and effort and work into this. And I think that it will be very beneficial for the city of Yelm and the region as a whole. I'm excited to lead on this with my colleagues. I'm hoping to get a lot of support, and I'm happy to answer any questions this evening. But I encourage you to go to my website, and all the bills are listed there. You can pull up the contents of the bills and more information about this package as it rolls forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other closing statements, Representative Wilcox?
No, thank you, but would be happy to answer any questions that might be there.
Okay, I see Councilmember Kaminsky.
Okay, so thank you, Andrew, for that. Just in simple terms, are you saying that we always have that money in the general, you always have the money in the general fund, but it was just never used for roads before, it was going to be used for something else, and now we can just use it for roads?
So great question, Terry. So I asked this question of my staff here a while back because, you know, I'm still fairly new. I'm learning as we go along. And I asked this question, I said, you know, can the general fund, the money that comes into the general fund, the operating budget, right? I said, can it be spent on anything? And the answer is yes. It can be spent on anything that is appropriated. So it goes through, I mean, we have an appropriations committee, Rep. Wilcox used to serve on that. That is where bills that have any financial consequence are considered. And then the budget, there is the majority writes the budget, the operating budget. But the funds that come in, the tax revenues, they're not dedicated. The only, some go to specific things, and there's constitutional aspects. And I'll give you one other example. So gas tax is one of the few what we call protected revenues. And it's protected by the 18th Amendment in our Constitution. It says a gas tax can only be used on roads and bridges and actual transportation things that move people, you know, tangible things, right? And then we have what we call the multimodal, which are all the other licensing fees and everything else. And that pays for transit and other things that maybe don't have a direct nexus with drivers. But the general fund can be used for anything. So that was the light bulb that went off. And I said, well, if that's the case, we sure have a lot of money in the general fund that could be used for transportation.
Kind of seems like a no-brainer. I mean, what would they have used it for? Any other thing, or just kept it there and not used it?
Well, if you look at history, the majority spends every single dime that we get every single year. And we have not only seen double-digit increases in revenue, but we've also seen double-digit increases in spending. And so some of those things are good. You know, we have a constitutional requirement to fund our school system. We've done that. We have a lot of things that are protected within the budget that are required to be funded through the budget. We do that. Tax revenue does that. But when you get these surpluses, we typically advocate when we see monies every year. This is why Rep. Stokesbury wrote his budget. He wrote a budget that addressed the revenue coming in, paid for all the obligations that we have, gave money back to the people of the state of Washington in a refund, which has never happened. Lowered some things and balanced the budget, and also saved for what we call the rainy days. So when the economy is not so great as it is right now, when you see these surpluses, I call it Christmas. You know, it's like we're getting ready to celebrate. Everybody gets very excited about all this money coming in that they can spend, and you're going to have this session, everybody with their hand out, everybody looking where this money, and some of it can go to some things that are much needed to be addressed in the state of Washington with these revenues that are coming in. But what it boils down to, Terry, is priorities. And we should be very fiscal conservative. So I look at it, I think we should be sticking some of that money away for what we call the rainy day fund, when the economy is not so good and we don't have the luxury of this money. So we don't have to cut programs and services, because we always do. And we should be able to do things and work within our means and anticipate that. And we can budget that way if we do it properly. We've done it in the transportation arena. We can do it entirely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, council? All right, well, what a great opportunity for us to have both of our representatives here with us tonight. And it's easy to see how engaged you are. And we really appreciate all the work that you're doing on behalf of our community. So thank you for that continued work. Some days we don't know how you do it, but you keep coming back. You keep coming back, and we appreciate it. Oh, Terry had another thought. Go ahead, Terry.
I just want you guys to know, we would really rather be in the room there with you and not up on the big screen. We all want to come to council and be able to speak clearly without being smothered up with a mask. So if you could please arrange that sooner than later, we'd really love it.
We're working on it.
That's my pet peeve, you know, everybody knows it.
Yeah, we're working on it.
I'm gonna call on Representative Wilcox, and but I have to say, I think it's funny because I had to put him on my laptop in council chambers that we get confused enough as it is between JT and JW. So this is just making it even more difficult for our viewers. But folks, this is actually Representative JT Wilcox. Go ahead.
Oh, well, first of all, totally agree. This state of emergency has lasted way too long than it should. Washington is very unique in having passed bills over the last 40 years that say that the governor gets to decide when there's an emergency, and he's the only one that gets to decide when it's over, unless a majority of the legislature decides to change those laws. And
Well,
yep.
don't people want to change it? I mean, come on, he can't have the sole authority.
I know 41 House Republicans that will vote to not take those powers away, because the governor, whoever he or she is, should have them, but certainly put limitations on it so that they have to be renewed, 30 or 60 or 90 days at a time. This is not the way any of us expected to be governed, and almost every other state has been able to resolve this in a more democratic way, democratic in the old sense, than the state of Washington has. But the partisan breakdown in the House, and it's a similar ratio in the Senate, is 57 to 41. So I know I've got 41 votes to have a state of emergency that is determined by the people's representatives in the legislature, not just by the governor. The other thing that I wanted to say is I appreciate those nice words that you said, JW, but I want to disagree a little bit. People involved in local government don't get as much attention. They get a lot more negativity that is often face-to-face, and they don't get paid much. And I appreciate what all of you are doing and the long time that many of you have devoted to the great little city of Yelm.
Thank you, JT.
Ditto.
James?
Let me put the hand down. Just a quick question. Is there any planning on how it may possibly be dealt with if the situation comes up to where the state workers that were let go or forced out, that it comes up that it was done so in a wrongful way? How that's going to be handled?
Well, I don't think that there's been any successful legal challenges. The governor has been pretty careful in terms of his legal defense. And if you watch Twitter, you will see the Attorney General often bragging he's 42-0 defending the governor. Now, I have seen the governor back down in a few cases when he thought he was going to lose in court. You have seen him back down when it comes to restrictions on churches. And I think he is unwilling to take on Second Amendment challenges. And so you haven't seen them trying to regulate gun shops, for example. All of the lawsuits relating to public employees, I believe, have failed so far. I do have members of my caucus who are sponsoring bills that would reinstate those workers, and I would support that. You know, we've got plenty of states that have been able to navigate this, which is not an unserious thing. Almost every one of us now know people that have been seriously sick or even passed away as a result of COVID. But there are states like Maryland, for example, which have navigated this in ways that are a lot less damaging to our freedoms than the state of Washington is doing.
Yeah, we've been looking at, you know, transportation obviously was one of the hardest hit from the mandate. We're seeing the impact with the loss of over 76 troopers. I just was on with them today. It's we're going to be seeing closer to 250 positions coming vacant here due to retirement and a myriad of other things. But the mandate had a significant role. Of course, we've seen that in workers within the maintenance, keeping our passes open. We've already seen what's happened with that. So I've been advocating and talking to a lot of people about, you know, what is a pathway back, you know, to be able to bring that. You can't just replace the talent. You know, and this is what I've been talking to about with our state patrol. Somebody that has been serving for 15 years that goes away, a new recruit is great, but it takes a long time to garner that same experience that person had that had 15 years. And the same, you can't just replace somebody that's been a snowplow driver for all those years with somebody. So, you know, it is in every aspect. I think, you know, we know that the thousands that were lost, but there's many, many, many more. So it is concerning. I know that we all know there was a better approach that could have been done. We've seen it in other states. We have advocated for it very vocally, as much as we can do in the positions that we're in. You know, we know that now we've had damn near 2 years of dealing with this very real issue, but we also know how to deal with it. And there is so much inconsistency in how the policy is being put forth. Just like, you know, not being able to meet in your chambers without a mask on. The fact that we can't conduct our legislative session in a normal function now with 2 years, especially with all the protocols, safety measures, testing, vaccination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's going to be part of our lives forever, guys. We all know this. We're not going to eradicate it. You know, this is a virus that will be with us. It will keep changing and mutating. We keep adapting and learning how as a people to adjust in our lives. And I think that is the problem. The biggest problem, and Rip Wilcox and I and others and many agree that it is in the governance. The legislature is a branch of government that needs to be in play. And the emergency, I've talked to so many. I just had lunch today with the great executive of Pierce County, Bruce Danmeyer. And, you know, they ended their emergency a long, long time ago. And they have been functioning very well as a county government, the second largest county in the state of Washington, without emergency proclamations in place, because there is the respect of how government should work. And that is something that we believe should be reinstated as soon as possible.
Andrew, did you say this comes before the legislature every 30 days? Comes up for revote or something? You had said that before.
No, there was some confusion in that because the proclamation as stated has broad reaching. For example, the eviction moratorium had no legislative oversight. That was in place until the governor decided it wasn't in place. And the implications of 19 months of that, that's another story for another day. What we did,
Andrew, let me clarify this a little bit, please. The basic emergency declaration has no end to it. It's totally up to the governor. There's a small segment of these that involve the suspension of current law that has expiration dates on them. Normally, those are things like suspending the penalty on late payment of taxes, or suspending the requirement that people in elder care facilities have to have regular visitation during the times when we were most concerned. I signed off on those. Though those are things that we would have voted for in any case, and they had absolutely zero leverage. I have a lot of people say, "Oh, don't sign those," and then the governor will come to the table. No, I've watched him do it. He calls press conference, goes to the press, and talks about what a stupid thing we did if we turn those things down. This is something that no one ever expected we would be dealing with. Again, bills passed 40 and 50 years ago. They've been stress tested. They're wrong. They should be adjusted. But it takes a majority to do that.
So the majority obviously believe it's okay to carry on with the state of emergency.
Well, I've talked to my counterpart, the Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, a number of times, and she said in public and to me that there will be a time in her mind to adjust that. It's when the emergency is over. Well, and therein lies the problem.
Okay, this could go on for a while, as it has. I want to thank, again, JT and Andrew. I particularly want to thank Kathy, who is also in chamber, and Lisa, who I'm sure is patiently waiting with dinner, for their support of you in this important role in the legislature. So thanks again for coming, and we will look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, folks, is the Parks, Arts, Recreation, and Culture Park Foundation presentation. I'm going to have Cody Colt do a little bit more of an introduction and then introduce Jim.
Yeah, so if council will remember, I talked about the Park Foundation a couple of meetings ago. The Public Service Committee has heard the presentation. I've talked to them as well. And the plan was, if council was on board, which last meeting it sounded like they were, to have Park Foundation come here and present to kind of set what next steps will be. And then if everything goes well, you can look forward to hopefully signing on with the Parks Foundation early next year. So I will let Jim take it away.
Well, thank you, Cody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor-elect DePinto, and the members of the council for having me. My name is Jim Cainber. I represent the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee, the Park Foundation, rather. What an interesting presentation this evening. You have such incredible legislative talent representing your area. I've worked very well with both of them, and I know they support your capital projects, so that is a real feather in your cap in terms of securing state funds. The Park Foundation now has formal relationships with the City of Olympia, the City of Tumwater, City of Lacey. We're negotiating with the county, the port, Tenino, and we're further along in our discussions with you and Yelm, and we appreciate that very much. I'll just touch the major aspects of our work, because really I'm here to answer questions, and many of you know already the type of work we hope to do together. Essentially, the Park Foundation model will. Oh, host has stopped my video. Start video. Oh. Can you hear me?
We can still hear you.
Oh, okay. It says that host has stopped my video, so my apologies for that. But I'll continue.
I'm going to go ahead and make you a co-host here, since I've regained control of my computer.
Yeah, I don't have any slides, so I don't need any access of that sort.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. So essentially, the goal is to make a spot, create a spot to really leverage private and foundation donations to support parks, arts, and culture projects that are led priorities of your legislature, the city council. And so by helping be a conduit for those foundation and private dollars, we believe that we can support the work you're doing. And our conversation with Cody and Mayor Foster, it sounded like there were lots of opportunities that the city of Yelm didn't get to take because you didn't have a way to park those funds to be used in tandem with your public money that you do for public projects. So that's the biggest role we believe we're able to play. And Cody was pretty transparent that he believed that that would be very helpful to bringing in new dollars that don't rely upon your tax base to fund your projects. So we also, former Representative Dolio was on the Capital Budget Committee. She was the vice chair. She's the president of the organization. And she, of course, knows quite a bit about how to ensure legislative priorities get into the budget, in the capital budget. So we hope to be able to support, of course, with the legislative talent we just met today, I'm sure you don't need much additional advocacy, but really help support the city in ensuring that your capital budget requests get heard. So another aspect that we're able to help with. Big cities have, lots of lobbyists and a lot of money to spend on these things, but the smaller cities really don't. We also have employed a professional grant writer. We would like to be able to give the city some coverage and assistance with the grant world. Let's see, it says start my video. Let me try that here. Oh, there we are, we're back. So be able to support you with the grants. Cody's done a great job writing grants, but grant writers a lot of times have an additional sort of lens that they can put onto grants. And so we're hoping to be able to support the city of Yelm with some grant writing, but also in reviewing your grants before you submit them to ensure that you have the best chance of receiving those funds to the Park Foundation to be able to spend on public projects in your area. And it really is about just supporting the council's priorities in parks, arts, and culture. And then the other thing we do on a lesser scale, but it's important in a smaller community like in Yelm, we offer local groups an opportunity to raise funds for local parks, arts, and culture projects into our foundation, and then they can be a nonprofit tax deductible donation. So if someone in your area wanted to do a tennis court on one of your existing parks, and there was a group that wanted to raise those funds as like a booster club, they could raise it into us. We would then work with the city to spend it in the way the city wants to spend it and that community group wants to spend it. We do a little less of that, but it's an important possible opportunity for Yelm, especially small communities. And I want to just point out one of our great successes recently. We partnered with Tenino in a couple different ways. The Tenino Quarry hosted the Olympia Symphony Orchestra, and it was the biggest group they had during the pandemic, bigger than the one in Olympia. Did anyone attend? I'm getting nods. Maybe you attended. It sounded like just an absolutely spectacular collaboration. We funded a big chunk of this thing out of our own funds with some other grant funds, but it's that type of opportunity in a small community. Granted, Yelm is not as small as it used to be, but in a smaller community, that's the type of opportunity where the Park Foundation can really step up and assist your parks folks, your council priorities in ensuring you get where you need to be. I want to just really take a moment to answer any questions about the prospective relationship, the memorandum of understanding, and answer any questions that the council may have.
Well, you've explained it quite well, and I know that Cody has talked about it before as well with the Parks Committee, but I do see we have a question from Councilmember Blair, and then Holly, and then Josh.
Thank you. It sounds like you guys got to do a lot of good work, and just because I think it should be out there, what is the cost, and what are we looking at as far like finances? Is it a monthly fee? Is it a percentage of the monies that come through? How does all that work with you guys?
Thank you, council member. Cody, you're at 7,500 as our requesters at 10,000?
10,000.
10,000. Okay, it's based upon the size of the city, and of course, Yelm has gotten pretty big. So you're in the same ballpark as Lacey and Tumwater. To answer your question directly, Council Member, the goal here is it's giving us with these small contributions to this overall organization, it gives us the capacity to support the work that we just discussed in terms of we have now a professional grant writer to review grants, we have the capacity to give assistance, and we have the ability to work with Cody and your staff, and of course the council, to leverage those private funds. That's really what it's about, is bringing private funds and foundation funds into the city to spend on public projects, so your taxpayers don't have to take that burden when there are other options for finding funds. That's really what it's about. And so assisting in that work, we will work closely with your staff, Michael and Cody, and of course the mayor and the new mayor, to determine what the priorities are for your community, whether it's a specific project you want help on or a number of smaller projects. That's up to you. Once we've determined that, then we will do our best to support in the ways that I outlined earlier.
Thank you, Jim. I was pretty clear on that from before. I'm curious, what is the percentage that your organization takes in order to help out with those things?
Oh, no, that is all included in the. I thank you, Council Member. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. That's included in this. We don't take a percentage. Our goal,
Or percentage, flat fee, whatever. I don't know. What's the
flat fee
fee?
is 10,000 from.
Is that per month, per year?
No, per year. Oh gosh, no.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, we wouldn't have to ask the cities, but to be able to get this kind of up and running and to get to the staffing position and to have the professional grant writer and others, myself, professional fundraiser, Beth and I are both lobbyists, the talent that you need to support your requests, to bring these private funds into the community. And then we have an accounting. Of course, we have, we're a nonprofit and therefore an accounting end of that as well. So there's a lot of things that this means. One little group in Yelm doesn't have to go reinvent this whole wheel. We can support you as we do the other cities at a very affordable, very small investment. Our goal is to leverage that into a huge return for the citizens of your community.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't expect anyone to work for free. I just want all that info out. That's all.
You think 10K is a good bargain, Council Member?
It's not somewhere that I fully understand and have the info on. Honestly, I would ask Cody.
Yeah.
Basically, this kind of stuff. If Cody tells me it's a good deal, then I trust Cody.
Yeah, just I think I mentioned this before, but Justin, I think Joe or somebody else will mention this too, is that I lost out in probably 10K in grants and stuff last year because we didn't have a charitable organization. So we would have got that back last year if I just had a 501c or 501c to put on there as an organization. So,
and in speaking to another city, they had been talking about doing a what do you call it, a sports field or something like that, and they had no idea that there was an entire legislative budget allocation just for sports fields. Just for those sorts of, so really just bringing everyone together to cross-pollinate, because there's no competition between the 2nd legislative district and the 22nd legislative district. You're going to get, if you ask for it, you're going to get a nice piece of the pie, just like we are up in the 22nd. And so there's both the legislative and then the foundation asks, and if a foundation is writing a check to support something in Yelm, they probably are writing in Tumwater, they're probably writing in Lacey and in Olympia, really just helping ensure that you're getting your piece of the pie. And I see lots of other questions, so I'll let you direct those.
you're muted, JW.
Sorry. Let's go on to Councilmember Smith and then Crossman, then DePinto.
Okay, I just wanted to say I was nodding about the Tenino Quarry because I'm on the South Thurston Economic Development Committee or Initiative, and that was a big thing. It sounded like it was just amazing, but I've heard other things that you guys have partnered on, and I think especially during these times, it's really good to have those things to get the community out and have some really good events. So I appreciate it and I'm for it.
Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, pretty much what Blair had said. Cost. I'm very big on that. So, just to go along with that, things I always look at. What's our return on investment? What's our guarantee? Those things, and then also secondary to that is who's your competition? You're not the only one that does this, I take it.
We are actually.
Okay.
There are models in other cities, but we're the only ones in this area that have stepped forward to do this. And a lot of large cities, of course, Seattle, Spokane, others, they have an entire foundation just for their city only. But remember, when you talk about your return on investment, they've got to have staff for each of those, they've got to have accounting staff, they've got to have lobbying staff, they've got all this other stuff that kind of we roll into one. And we're really trying, Councilmember, we are trying to be an excellent return on investment. And it's going to be an interesting process. I mean, we're going to identify some immediate things that we can support the city on, and then hopefully be able to expand that as your needs increase and your projects come forward in the next few years. We hope to be able to expand that. It's a new model, but we came in at a low investment point for your city based upon your population, so that we could create a formal relationship. We've been doing this in Olympia for a long time without a formal contract. They just write grants, drop them on us, and then we spend them the way they want. That's really how it's just almost a pass through. We hate to use that term because it has a negative connotation, but really we're a pass through. And then that's what we hope to be for the rest. But to be able to scale it up, we needed a little bit of seed money to do so.
Okay, but do you have an estimated ROI on my 10? Like, we're giving you 10 grand. What do you estimate? What are we going to get back in return?
And that is what indeed.
Any guarantees?
Yeah, no. And in fundraising, we're not allowed to give guarantees, but I think that our goal is to be, set the formal relationship between our organization and your city, and then negotiate that with your representative, the council priorities through Cody, through the mayor, through the staff, to understand what it is that you expect of us. And then there will be a bit of a back and forth in terms of deliverables, but we hope that the ROI, well, obviously we're hoping that it becomes an annual thing. So it's a bit of an initial investment now, and we hope it's very beneficial for both parties involved. It has been for Olympia. They are our biggest champion, and Tenino is also the mayor of Tenino has been an amazing supporter and usually jumps on these calls and gives a nice cheer routine for what we've been able to accomplish in those two cities.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember DePinto?
Thank you, Mayor. I brought up a lot of these same questions, Councilmember Crossman, Councilmember Blair, that you brought up. Money is my big issue as well. And I think I used those exact words in our public services committee meeting, asking for the ROI and what are we going to get out of that $10,000? Because that's important. It's important to know, when we're investing taxpayer money into this, if we're going to get a return on it. And, I don't think he wants to give a direct answer, but if you look at some of the other projects from other cities, and this is just for my estimates, not anything that's solid or anything, but I'm figuring at least $50,000, somewhere around that range, to a few $100,000, if not millions, depending on the project. Having those grant writers, it's a huge benefit for us, where we're not writing those grants, but we're going to be reaping the benefits of this. It's a small, in my opinion, it's a very small amount to pay for the return that we're going to get on it. Otherwise, we wouldn't get this money at all. The other big part of that was the nonprofit portion of that. As Cody was talking about earlier, we can't even apply for some of these projects without going through or having a nonprofit on our behalf go through this process. So it's very beneficial for us. It's a very low cost. We're going to get a huge return, in my opinion, on this. And obviously Jim's here, but if it doesn't work out, we can just, we can cut our ties and go on our own separate ways. But I don't think that's going to be the issue here. I do think we're going to be able to work well with them hand in hand. and not only just get money from what some new projects, but also projects that, like I said, we wouldn't even have the opportunity to get to otherwise. So I personally think it's a great idea. I asked a lot of these same questions in committee, and I'm confident in Cody's ability to determine whether or not we can make some money off this for the taxpayers, and whether or not that Jim's group is going to be able to perform for us. And I believe they do. They have a great track record with other cities surrounding us. So I'm really, if anyone's on the fence, I'm from the fiscal standpoint, I think it's a smart move.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much for bringing this in, and thank Beth and the whole team for putting this together for our larger communities. Cody's going to be bringing something back to the Public Services Committee and hence to the council at large for consideration for that agreement going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity.
Appreciate your patience waiting in.
Oh, it was very interesting. Wow, it's a whole different conversation than you hear up here in Olympia. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Take care, all.
Thanks, Jim. And speaking of that, JT and Andrew went a little longer than I'd expected, which is great. But we wanted to give Jim an opportunity to talk and then get on to his evening. So we're going to double back now onto the legislative agenda, and Michael's going to finish off that talk about leading the council through a discussion on what your legislative agenda is going to look like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will share my screen here. Looks like the screen sharing has been disabled. Kathy, if you could undo that for me, that'd be awesome.
Let me see if I can help with that. Michael needs to screen share.
I'm not able to make that change. One moment.
You have to make it JW the host.
Michael, I just
Okay,
made
there
you
you go.
co-host, so you should be able to share now.
Thank you, sir. All right, can everyone see what I'm seeing here?
Yep.
All right. So council, this is just a reminder of the draft that we put before you earlier. These are all priorities that would be urged for your consideration for the legislative agenda. I will walk through them, and then the next page has the ideas that I received from all of you. You remember I asked a couple times, hey, send in your ideas. Here's what we're working with right now. We want to make sure that this is a very inclusive process. So the next page has additional ideas. And then what I'll do is I'll just stop and open it up for all of you to essentially just discuss openly amongst yourselves and make some priorities and some recommendations. If you would like, I can then take the feedback that you provide tonight and we can tee this up for your meeting on the 14th for you to take formal action if you would like. Action's not required. It's something you've done sometimes in the past, sometimes not. But the most important part is you all coming together and establishing a set of priorities that you can then go advocate for down in Olympia with all of us. So the first thing, I will share the two legislative agendas that were highlighted last night as part of the Thurston Shared Legislative Partnership. I'll do that next before we get to your ideas. The big thing is number 2. You heard about, implement the Yelm Loop, which has already been funded. But the key thing is to invest the 19 million in the roundabouts. One of the things that we talked about, and as you heard from Representative Wilcox and Barkas tonight, it's one thing to invest in the regional priority, which is addressing the bridge over the Nisqually. But if you invest in that and you don't also do the roundabouts, either in tandem or as Representative Wilcox said before, there's only one viable alternative to I-5. And so it doesn't make sense to do them in a separate sequence or cadence. The ask, as you'll see when we get to the next slide, is $106 million. And that's where, as you heard from Representative Barkas, right, the $19 million for the roundabouts is the only viable alternative to I-5 compared to the $106 million, which just moves that project one step forward to eventually be considered for federal funding. It's really a drop in the bucket comparatively, especially for the ROI that we would get for the region, especially for us here in the community, in the Yelm community. The third thing is the second phase. We were very successful with the legislature to get funding for the first one. This one actually completes the second phase, going over the bridge. That dollar amount is before you there. The fourth one is regarding electric vehicle infrastructure. One of the things that we talked about was partnering with Lacey. This is on their legislative agenda to try to take a more, regional approach. Obviously, they're a more urban city, and as we know, all roads lead to and through Yelm. If we could partner and make a budget request that works with them to establish electric vehicle infrastructure, especially with all the electric vehicles that are coming out and all the traffic that comes through Yelm, it could be a great opportunity to help people recharge and invest their money while they do so here in our Yelm community, supporting our small businesses, which is so important.
Michael, can you see hands being raised?
I cannot.
Okay, so I see a question from Councilmember Wood, and then I think Councilmember Blair as well.
Perfect. I'll hit pause. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mike. Hey, I'm curious if you can give me a little clearer definition of electric vehicle infrastructure investment.
Sure. It's similar to what we did independently using the port grant that one year, the charging station that we put out by the Yelm Community Center. It's an opportunity to secure funding from the legislature to establish multiple charging stations in locations that we would establish together. Obviously, there's an opportunity to put them in places where the public gathers and congregates. We could put them more near the park, but there's also the advantage and the opportunity to put them along the highway in the historic downtown area where those businesses reside, or at the other end of town where businesses are there, right? Trying to create an opportunity for people to stop, recharge, shop, and support the local economy.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is in one of my other meetings, I know that there was a conversation in reference to this similar topic, but there was a lot different perspective as far as the involvement of government in these charging stations. And that's where that throws up some concerns for me, because I don't believe, and I'd like to ask Cody on this just because he knows so much about history. I don't believe the government got involved with establishing gas stations when the country went to gas powered motors and was able to drive across the country and be in multiple places after that. Code?
Yeah, I could give a long history lesson in the gas station, but there was some government assistance for rural areas for these kind of things where you did not have the availability. This would be, I think, similar to that, or even to the point where, as the school district has a fuel station for government vehicles that can be used for transit vehicles and stuff like that. So this could be used for that kind of infrastructure. But I would agree with you on the sense that we don't want to build giant charging station banks that charge people and stuff. That would not be the intent of this.
Thank you, sir.
Then James. Yes, no, James.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to turn the video back on here in a second. I had to step outside. On these charging stations, and Michael, you brought up that we already have one. Myself, I've seen very limited use of that. Basically, there's a couple city employees and a handful of residents that I've seen use that. Other than that, I don't see very many people using it. I feel like if there's a demand for it, the current fuel stations are going to put those in. And I say that because driving across the country, you're seeing it happen everywhere. So I don't know. I don't think that should be on our legislative agenda. My own opinion anyway. We've got a lot more important things to tackle as a city. And if there's a demand for these charging stations, then the current fuel stations, I mean, we're not little podunk 200 person town in the middle of nowhere. We've got ample fuel stations in town, and many of which are backed by very large corporations. So if they want to get into that market, they're going to do it on their own. And I don't see why we should take part in spending money on that. That's just my own opinion. I don't know where everyone else is at.
No, this is good. This is good feedback. This is why we bring this before you, to see what your interests and priorities are. So thank you.
Josh, are you tagging in on this topic?
Yeah. So who pays the electric bill at these places? Who pays for the power to feed these and charge the cars?
Well, that's one of the things that is being worked out or needs to work out as they form this electric vehicle infrastructure. You know, there's public-private partnerships. There was grants that was given out through the Department of Ecology as part of the settlement that happened through Volkswagen. There's funding that as you heard about tonight from the legislature, that could be allocated to build, you know, the infrastructure. It depends on where they're located. So there's lots of variables there.
Yeah. Who's paying for it now? The ones that the city has, and how much is it costing the city? I mean, I don't think it's much, but it costs something, I would assume.
Yeah, the concern for cost was raised by council, and that's why we put the solar panel on there, and so that there's actually a solar panel that is generating a charge that is used to amplify the cars, and then in off hours, that resource is being charged from the grid. And so I don't have the specifics on that offhand, but I'm sure that's something that Cody can get for us.
Yeah, and I agree with Blair. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, I love electric cars. I've been in some really nice ones. They're cool. But right now I just don't see a high demand for it.
So I'm going to call on Terry next. I think there's a distinction that needs to be made that's not clear in number 4. This isn't necessarily to provide free electric charging for everybody. It's to provide the infrastructure, and a municipality, for example, could choose to make them pay stations where you put your credit card in and you get yourself a full charge. You're right, though. Other places like Safeway put in their electric vehicle charging stations right now, and those are free because they know it'll draw business to their place. But going forward, I think that the legislature is just interested in creating this infrastructure, and then it would be up to the local jurisdiction on whether they charged for it or not. Terry?
Well, the way I'm reading this is it's just an investment plan, which is great. Make a plan. That doesn't mean we're installing anything or doing anything. No, you can make a plan. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
That's the first step. Yes.
It's just on paper. Because I haven't bought my Tesla yet, Cody, so I don't really need that either. But, you know, if it's important, but a plan is a plan, plan's fine.
James?
Honestly, if this is being something that's pushed into the legislature, if we're going to do anything, I think we should be encouraging our representatives to not do this. I don't think the state should be building charging stations or the infrastructure for this. That's like I said, the existing fuel stations are going to do this. When the time comes that there's more electric cars, if the time comes there's more electric cars, then the fuel station is going to have the choice of either they're going to put those in or they're going to go out of business. So I don't think the state should be spending the money on this, and I don't think we should be supporting any process to encourage the state to do it, let alone ourselves.
You know, in study sessions, you don't really make decisions. You're not passing resolutions, but you do have the opportunity to come to consensus on things. And so as you go through this, Michael needs to hear sort of an up or down on each one of these things, how you feel if it's important or not. And so in the old Roman days, they did the thumb up, thumb down kind of thing. And if we wanted to go through each of those, if Michael got a preponderance of opinion one way or the other, he could then draft that next draft to come back to council for full approval. So why don't we go through the whole thing, and then Michael can walk you through that sort of consensus building exercise.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. So for number 2, accelerating the implementation of the Yelm Loop and investing the roundabouts, which you heard, Is there a general consensus to keep this one on the list, council? Mayor, I'm going to need your eyes on this.
Before we go through all these, I think we should open it up as well for other ideas, if we want to discuss those as well, because it looks like council's probably not going to be supportive of most of this, if I can read the room right.
What's the next page? You said there was more on the next page.
These are the ideas we put out there a couple of times. Hey, send your thoughts and your ideas. What I did is I changed the language just slightly, but this is pretty much verbatim what the ideas have been submitted to date after asking a couple of times. And so if there's anyone on here that sent in their ideas that is not captured, I apologize, but I tried to just copy and paste and put those on here for your consideration. Councilmember DePinto.
Thank you. And I just kind of remind folks here, we heard from our representatives, and this is a short session this year. We're not doing any budgets or anything. In my view, in my opinion, we should be planning for not next year, but the following year. That's the session that we really want to ask for the big bucks for. So asking for, these are all, there's a lot of good projects on this list here, and I think some of them are very valid, and including the last page. But I think we should focus on the bigger picture items, the necessities that we have to have. Obviously we're rebuilding or renovating our plant, our water treatment plant. It makes sense to me that we try, and I get that we're paying for it by a loan and all that, but these modules that we have to put in here, these, hold on, let me make sure I got the right numbers here. Sorry about that. But some of these not reactors, Cody, can I ask you to help?
The membranes?
Membranes,
Yeah.
Thank you. These membranes cost $500 to $1 million a piece. We've got to do like 8 of them or so, 7?
7 initially.
So we got to do 7 initially. We got to do more after that. It makes sense to me to ask for some of these bigger projects or bigger items that we don't have to put on the backs of our taxpayers. And I get that, electric vehicles, they are the future. We should be ramping up on that. But right now we need some basics here in the city of Yelm. And the basics are getting this improvement, getting that money, either asking for 500 to $1 million on that. I think that's probably our best bet. You heard from Rep. Wilcox, so what he said about Thurston County, if they're not going to support that. So it's clear that that's a priority for him. We should mimic that, in my opinion, and leverage he's a minority leader, so he's got a lot of sway in the legislature. Representative Marcus being being the transportation ranking, he's also got a lot of. We got 2 powerhouses for legislators here, and if they're focusing on those certain projects, I think we should absolutely mimic that. Because it gives us a heck of a better shot at getting it than some of these other projects that they may or may not support us on. So we also should consider that. And so if I could make a suggestion, it would be for that number 2 to continue on that with the roundabouts. I think that's obviously a slam dunk for us, especially with Rep. Wilcox and Marcus on both huge proponents of that. That's something that's going to make a huge impact for the city of Yelm, the residents, lowering that traffic, helping I-5 when that gets bogged down. That's going to make a direct impact. Having those reactors or those I always call them reactors. The membranes are going to help us out a lot as well. We already need that. Any extra penny that we can save on that is going right back to the ratepayers. So those are my 2 big pushes that I think we should focus on. The trails, that's a good project as well, but maybe a little bit longer term down the road a little bit. It's a nice to have, but these are the must-haves. We need to focus on transportation. We need to have this renovation done, and anything to lower those costs or accelerate that, I think we should take advantage of.
So just to be clear, is that a proposal to add funding for the membrane to this list?
Yeah, I think we should ask for $750,000 for the cost of one, or to at least to lower the cost of one membrane. And it's a doable amount. And I would suggest we go after that in the capital budget, which will be not this upcoming session, but the following session is when they'll develop that budget. And by talking about it now, talking about this upcoming session, not necessarily asking for money. We can ask for little bits too, like small things, like 10,000 here, 20,000 there, but we need the big ass. Those need to be multi-year projects. And by establishing it this year, getting it ready with them, having a one pager where we can say, hey, this is what the membrane costs. This is how much the city's putting in, because we're putting in the vast majority. And the legislature, when they hear that there's vested interest in a local municipality, when they're matching funds, that makes it that much more attractive to them. Because that way the city or the whatever municipality it is has skin in the game. So they want to spend money on those kind of projects where there's already money being invested by the local municipality.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything on this page that's more important than the first page, other than the masking, of course. Can you go back to page
Go back
one?
to the first, there you go.
Yeah.
So we've looked at both pages. There's a general thumbs up consensus on number 2. We have a new addition from Councilmember DePinto to look at funding the membranes. Thoughts, feedback on that? I agree, it's a good idea. Cody and I and the mayor have talked about that, and it's something that would be worthy of adding, even though it's already paid for and already funding, but it would reduce the costs. General thumbs up on that? On adding that, okay. We have a new number 3. What about the trail bridge renovation?
Seeing 3 thumbs down and 1 thumb up. Holly, Terry?
If we have less on our list, are we more likely to get the money for one?
Yeah, but as you heard tonight from the legislators, there's a lot of money that is out there in one-time money, especially with ARPA and things of that sort. I would encourage council, especially since it is already on there and it's already halfway completed and funded, to stay the course on that, especially because of the significance that it has for tourism, recreation, economic development. There's a whole coalition of people, especially the folks that we just heard from with Jim and Park, that could help us advocate for those funds and leverage them. I'd encourage council to leave number 3 on the list.
Well, that was going to be my question. Is that something that Jim talked about could be pulled into that? I mean, he could help with that.
Yes. Cody, tell us about your conversations with Jim on that one.
That is something he could help with. That's a
Okay.
huge ask, though. $725,000. As you know, Grant Beck got applied for a grant for the entire project. We got about half, and so we're able to build the Yelm Prairie Line Trail, or Yelm Tenino Rainier Trail now, as it's called, all the way up to that bridge. But we can't get over the Nisqually River, so the trail is just going to dead end at the bridge right now. And the hope is that if we got the money, we could finish that bridge, and then it could go all the way to Roy.
Right, and there's other people involved in that project too, right? The Nisqually River Land Trust and all those other people.
And Pierce County's big on it as well.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, so I'll keep it then. Keep on that.
And it would be a contingent trail throughout the our area of the county and the state, which would allow the Seattle to Tacoma or Seattle to Portland bike to ride that versus being on the road for that big section. So
Tracy's been patiently with his yellow hand up. And then James.
Thanks, JW. Hey, I'm just going to take a moment to reiterate what I've said many, many times on this. And it's up to you guys to decide what it is what you want to do on this thing. But my thought still remains, why in the world would we give up a rail? Granted, it's not in any sort of shape that would, it's been deteriorating for years. Nobody's done anything to it, but it's still there. Why would we even consider giving this up? I think it's a terrible mistake to give up this rail. Because we need another bike path. I take my dogs on those paths on a regular basis on walks, and they are fantastic. It's me, my dogs, my wife, and pretty much that's about it. There isn't all these folks you hear about out on these trails, at least this time of year, my friend, they're just not happening. They're not out there. And like I said, I'm not opposed to trails. I think they're fantastic. I think they're wonderful, but I think turning an existing rail line into a bike path, I just think everybody really needs to take a long, hard thought on that and contemplate whether that's actually a really good plan. But that's my 2 cents on that issue, and I promise I won't even talk about it again with you guys.
If you build it, they will come.
James?
I'm I'm with CM Wood on that, to be honest. Whether it's our money, grant money, whatever it is, I just don't think I don't think the money needs to be spent on that. There's more important shit to do, just plain and simple. We've got quite a bit of trail around here, and there's not a whole ton of people using it. So spending I'm assuming the 725,000 is, I'm assuming that's half of what the actual cost is. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what, $1.5 million, roughly $1.4 million on a trail that maybe 20 people are going to use in a month? Doesn't sound like a very good use of money. I think there's a lot of other things that the money could do a lot more good with than that.
Josh?
Well, I'm a big fan of it. I've been Rails to Trails user since they've came to be just about. And a lot of people use the trail. You know, it goes right by my store right here, and there's always people on it. I use it every day. Lots of people use it. It would be really nice to see this happen before I die, as it's been in the works for a long time. And as I understood it, this is not is this still an active rail line that they can build this on, or is this a dead one? And the active one is still active and still going to be active?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just a deadline anyway, so why not use it? And I think, and it would be nice to know the numbers, how many people actually use the trail just besides us guessing, because I mean, I see people on it every day. I use it every day, so, but you know, is it 20 people use it or is there 100 people and what's beneficial? But if it's a deadline, and I'm a big fan of it.
Gary?
And also, this is coming from a totally different program. So it's not like you're using sewer money instead of this. This is from a parks program or recreation program. So I think it's different allocated money, right?
Yes, depending on where it comes from.
Okay, so it's not a conflict of interest of the monies.
No, but if it's funded out of the capital budget, it could be a conflict. Again, it depends on, you know, where the legislature has funds and decides to allocate them. You know, that's why it's important to not only establish a list, but then to establish a prioritized list.
Right.
So if tough decisions have to be made, you know, you've already landed the plane on what those decisions can be based on resources available.
What does number 1 mean? What does that?
It's just a general statement of working with our partners and establishing the regional legislative agenda and sharing those. I'll get to the next one, or if we're short on time, I can just email it out to you, what the final shared legislative agenda is and what the final SSMC legislative agenda is. I'd be glad to just email it out to you, considering we're late and we still have a couple of items.
Okay.
Tracy, then James.
Thank you, JW. I'd like some clarification from what I've been explained about that existing rail. It does in fact tie into the Tacoma rail system not obviously not here in Yelm, but at the other end of it, it is still tied into an existing system. Not that it's, it's a spur off of an existing system that's not used any longer, but the rails and beyond that, beyond the bridge on the Pierce County side are still intact from my understanding. Can I get some clarification on that, Cody? Is that accurate, or do you know?
So the rail is abandoned, and we have talks to pull it up. And I think the main concern you have is that, does it connect to something? Currently, at some point, that rail does connect to a line, but the issue is that part of the line we do not own. So if it's abandoned at that point as well. So we could have our section of trail of, 3 miles that doesn't connect anywhere, and we could get some hand carts and have a blast. So, but that's about all we can do.
No, and I understand. And it's that I think that's where the communication and the conversation needs to take place with whoever owns the other end of that rail that our rail presently connects to. Because at this point, as I believe what you just stated, is that it does in fact connect to a rail that is just not being presently used, but it is, it's still there. They haven't decommissioned, or they haven't removed any of their rail or put in a bike path, if you will, on their side of this chunk of rail that we happen to own this side of. Is that accurate?
There is plans in the works. If you've paid attention to, Roy is working, I believe Roy in Pierce County is working to have that trail or that rail abandoned and put a trail in there as well.
So there's
So-
still time for a conversation if that conversation were brought to the table with the folks in Roy or wherever this may have, this conversation may be taking place. And the reason I bring that up is because just like we're faced with right now, a lot of us aren't going to be here after the first of the year. And there's a lot of new folks here that are going to have a little different perspective than the folks that are leaving on a lot of issues and manners. And I believe that's probably, not a unique case to Yelm and our city council. I think this is going to be the case in a lot of jurisdictions. And with that being said, I believe it's only fair to allow the folks to, to at least have the conversation before we commit to this final destination for the rail system that we have here in Yelm. That's played a huge part in the development of this community. And I guess I'll put it on the same track as that water tower that we've just spent a bunch of time and money and effort on, that realistically is just for nostalgic purposes. This isn't even for just nostalgic purposes that I'm talking about. This is for a viable form of transportation to get products in and out of our community, and whatever else type of rail activity we might want to use. Granted, like once again, it's in disarray right now, but it's all the pieces are still laying around to where this could be usable. And like I said, it just seems like we wouldn't be doing our part if we didn't at least try to have a conversation about this and make sure all the folks that are involved or have an opportunity to really discuss it, all the shareholders, if you will.
Just quickly, I agree with you, Tracy, that it is useful to have these kind of alternate modes of transportation, but just from a Yelm perspective, that area right by the train tracks was just rezoned to R6. So a lot of the reasoning with that rail was to help with the industrial area that it went into. Most of that industrial area didn't develop like we thought it would. And you also have the recent industrials that were rezoned to R6, so it's now residential. So the train tracks are running right next to residential areas. So if we somehow magically upgraded those tracks, redid them, you'd have trains running right by a residential area, several residential areas that people would not be happy about. Now, I agree with you that it would have been nice maybe 6-7 years ago to have this conversation you're talking about, but at this point we're so far along, it'd be almost more cost prohibitive to go back and try to retrofit that rail to work up to it than it would be to just continue with the abandonment and get some money from the rails for the scrap metal of them to help pay for the project. So I do agree with you on the different modes of transportation. I just think this rail may not be the avenue that we want it to be, or we hope it could be, as you're saying.
James?
Quick, has there been any study into the cost of this versus what the cost would be to renovate or fix up this track between here and wherever it connects, along with that discussion with obviously Roy and whoever is in between there?
I can tell you that it'd be significantly more to upgrade that bridge to handle trains than it would be to make that bridge handle people. Significantly more. And then you also have several sections of rail that have already been pulled in the Yelm area that would have to be replaced. You'd have to have the trail pulled out in the areas where it was laid. I can't tell you exact cost, but I guarantee just from what I've talked to, it would be significantly more to retrofit and upgrade those rails than it would be just to lay a concrete path down as a trail and get scrap metal money for those rails.
Okay. Because I think and this is I've only been part of these conversations slightly over the last couple of years. Obviously, it's been a much longer discussion. But what I'm thinking is in the future, as this place grows, it's either, currently it's a bedroom community. It's what Yelm is. If that's what Yelm wants to be, then it is. But if we want to encourage businesses to come in, they're going to bring employment that's actually gainful. They need a way to transport product. And currently, you all seen it. Getting big trucks through here is not an easy feat. So having that as an option of getting product in and out of here could possibly like at least open the door where it wouldn't otherwise open. But I get it. At this point, we're probably a little far off along the plan to kind of about face on it, but hopefully the state's thinking about all that. It's tough. I guess I see the value in the trail system stuff. I'm sure there's more people to use it than my own personal what I've seen in the middle of the day on a Wednesday. But when I say I just think there's more important things to spend the money on right now, it's bigger than the trail system. It's everything else that needs to get done. So I mean, if that's going to be on this, I would have it the lowest priority one, if at all. That's just where I'm at.
Joe? Muted. There we go.
Thank you, Mayor. I was actually a proponent of keeping the rail years ago. I agree with Councilmember Wood that it would have been smart of us to go forward with that, renovating it and at least exploring the possibility, see the feasibility of it. As it stands now, I think it'd be very expensive to rebuild that bridge or to renovate it for rail use. Not to mention if we could get those right of ways anyway, or those other portions of the track to get us to get products and industrial, have an industry use it. That train has kind of left the station, but I do believe that we could use a portion of it maybe for a different purpose. And if we did want to keep a portion of that track, at least up to the bridge, there could be options where we could do like push carts that would be attractive, maybe alongside the trail. I'm not sure how fast or how expensive that would be, or how fast we could redo that project and if it's even feasible at all. But for me, that's the only other option. I don't think we can actually use it for industry anymore, especially since we voted to redesignate it as residential in that area. So it's very hard. It'd be very difficult for a company to actually hook up for it. And yeah, I would agree with Councilmember Blair, though, this should probably be towards the bottom. I don't want to stop work on it. I think there's a lot of good work that's been done on it. And I believe in the overall project. I don't believe in that pedestrian bridge over the city of Yelm to do it, but I do believe in a big portion of it to attract new folks to the city of Yelm, spend their money here, and also as an amenity for the current residents that live here that use that trail a lot. But again, I think we got to focus on some of the bigger issues. It's a nice thing to have. It'll be a great thing to have, but it's not a must-have. A must-have are these membranes. A must-have is improving our transportation system. Having a trail isn't a must-have. It's a nice-to-have. And it's a good nice-to-have. It's something we should be working on. But for this purpose of our legislative agenda, I think we should focus on those two, being transportation and those membranes.
James?
Just because Joe brought something up and I didn't think about it. I mean, if down the line it does become a trail, I mean, it's kind of a cool idea to at least try to preserve part of the track as like a historical thing. Obviously I haven't been around here as long as a lot of you, and my family obviously hasn't been around as long as a lot of others around here. But as far as like historical informational purposes and just learning, if it's gonna happen, I mean, preserving part of it might not be a terrible idea.
Josh?
So on this side, a lot of the track is still there, and what's really cool, I always thought was neat, was at the bus barn, you can see the old build out for the train, and what, I don't know what was there before was a bus barn, what the train brought into it, but it's kind of cool to see the doors and stuff like that for the historical aspect. Secondly, on our proposition, I think it's good to have multiple topics to bring to legislature, multiple things, because, people are going to look at this, and if all they see is just the roads, some people are going to want to do something, like the trails, like, hey, they're going to be looking for projects like, oh, we're going to fund this project because we want to fund a trail type project. So I think we should have an assortment of things to bring, not just, we just need these two things. Well, yes, those are important. We do need those things, but I think it's good to have a well-rounded package to present for legislative. So, maybe something doesn't get, but they're like, yeah, we'll grab that because we want to fund that. Does that make sense?
Terry?
Moving on to number 5, is that, Michael, what you were suggesting about trading the acquisition of land on the main road for habitat versus the 640 acres? Is that idea?
No,
Conservation?
that's something separate. That proposal is part of the essentially the opportunity that exists now to just do a land swap or a land exchange that would be very little cost and using an asset that we have for something else. That's a whole nother conversation. What this
wasn't that discussed in an executive session? What are we doing right now?
Oops.
So,
did I say
so
the wrong?
that's a separate conversation. What this is specifically about supporting the legislature and the city of Tumwater and Olympia in establishing a fund to acquire land. So long term, once a habitat conservation plan is established, that plan will specify how much land, how much acreage needs to be set aside. And what Olympia and Tumwater are running into is they've completed their plan, and economic development and infrastructure is now impeded by the need to actually acquire that acreage to implement their plan. And so what they're running into is they've completed their plan. Now they need to go out there and acquire the land. And what they're asking the legislature for is either independent funding one time or a funding mechanism to acquire that land to help support the development costs that go into that. So totally separate animal. And the interest in ours here is we're going to be just behind them in developing our plan. As you know, you've been briefed. We're starting our habitat conservation plan effort. It's around 1.5 years, 2 years of an effort. And so partnering with the city of Tumwater and the Port of Olympia in getting some sort of fund established that they could benefit from is something that we could benefit from on the back end. If you had to pick 3 priorities, as of right now, number 4 and number 5 would fall off the list because they're not immediately urgent to Yelm, but they are part of a long-term investment that we will be making, and having legislative support versus using our own dollars would be advantageous.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Joe.
Thanks, Mayor. So kind of going off of what Councilmember Crossman has mentioned, and a few other council members, to have a lot of projects. My background is lobbying, and when you're going for multiple projects, there's a lot of legislators that don't want. There's like, well, pick one. If we have a bunch of projects, it gets kind of convoluted on what we really want, and it's not necessarily they're picking and choosing. It's us pushing for 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever we go for, but we're going all in on these. When we they're not the ones that are saying, oh, this seems good. It's great to have a champion for different projects. Like it sounds like Representative Wilcox would be for those roundabouts. It sounds like he'd really go to bat for us on that. Those are easy pickings for us. But when we just put them out there to put them out there, we got to be really strategic in how we go after them. And it's a huge, it's very time consuming to fight for these different projects. It's tons of meetings. It's you got to have a bill. Depending on if it's a policy or if it's fiscal, but it's a huge process. And for just individual projects, just these 2 alone, it's going to cause a lot of work, to really lobby for these. And I'm not sure if we're having a professional lobbyist. I know it's budgeted, but we haven't had a lobbyist for years to fight for these. I'm obviously going to fight for it in my role as mayor, but and I'll do whatever the council, chooses. If we want to go for 3 or 4 for 5, I'll fight for all of them. But it's just that much harder. If we have it very simplified, I guess simplified. Anyway, if it's more of a simple legislative agenda with just a couple items on that, it's easier, especially for Rep. Marcus or Rep. Wilcox to fight for. When we have a bunch of them, it gets lost. Where's like, oh, Yelm has 4 or 5. What are they again? And I mean, it's hard to push for those. So I would try to limit it as much as we can. There can be some. There's like the habitat conservation. I think that's a smart idea that we should go after. But let maybe another city take a lead. Well, I guess this one would probably be more for us. But some of the not rule, but some of the ones where we can partner with other cities, we can absolutely say this is a priority, but not really, go after it as hard as some of the other cities would. Just be a partner on that. So again, I would try to limit us as little as we can as asked, because when we're asking for millions upon millions of dollars, it sometimes gets lost in translation if you have multiple projects.
Well, that's what I was asking a long time ago, like half an hour ago. If we just keep it simple, will we have a chance of getting 1 or 2 of them? So thank you for repeating that, Joe.
Josh?
Okay, so based on that, if we did 1, 2, 3 in order, the roundabout's going to have the most support, the 19 million. So number 2, DePinto's suggestion for the water membranes, that's very important to Yelm. So I mean, yeah, we should really try to push for that if we get some money for that. And then I would say number 3, the trail, just because there's so many other entities involved with that. I think will help, being the Pierce County, Roy are pushing big for it. The other organizations are pushing for it.
Including the governor's office.
Yeah. So there's a lot of other entities going for that. So I think that helps. If it was just us, then yeah, okay. Yeah, let's drop that off. But, if we want to focus on, these are our top 3, I would say those 3, on the trail will be number 3 of that, and then go from there.
I'm seeing some nods of ascension. This was a really good discussion, Council. Michael can abridge this down and bring it back on the 14th for one final look and thoughts on it. But the folks that are making the point that this is a short session and legislators have limited ability to hear us, it sounds like a pretty good list.
So the takeaway that I have is keep number 1, 2, add in a 3rd one, which is the membrane, and then keep number 3 as number 4. So there would be essentially 3 core priorities for the city, and then all the other ones would essentially go into a parking lot for further conversation when the council and the mayor deliberates on this next year as you establish your legislative priorities for the longer legislative session that has more funding available and is typically a high dollar amount that is looked at. Again, this year is a one-off. There's lots of revenue there, and I think keeping all 3 of those priorities in there as you recommended, Councilmember Crossman, is a good idea. Gives options for everybody to choose from, and is put in priority order. So that's the takeaway. I will bring this back to you on the 14th as a proposal for you all for action, if that's what you'd like. Or you could just land the plane right now and just say, you're good with this bundle and be on the same page. Do you want to act on it, or do you want to just stick with it as you've talked about now?
Of course, we don't act on things in study sessions, but we know what you mean. James has a thought, and then Terry.
As part of these priorities, can we have it in there to support efforts of ending the emergency declaration?
It's your agenda, Council.
I mean, if nothing more than just a voice behind it as the city. I don't at this point, I mean, over the last almost 2 years now, I've just thrown my hands up and we can't really do a damn thing. But if anything, of just getting behind some people that are trying to bring some sense to this madness. I don't know how to word that on this list, or if anyone else would even be interested in that, but
Could we ask for like an exemption? Because we're so healthy in Yelm, we just don't need the thing.
Well, that's a very inaccurate statement, Terry. We're absolutely not the most healthy community in Thurston County. I beg to differ. Our numbers out here in Yelm are horrendous compared to the rest of the county. And that's why we're going to stay with those really good safeguards that the county health director has put in place, at least for this council under my direction at this time. However, if you want to put that down as a legislative agenda item and talk to your legislators about it every chance you get, you heard them tonight. They don't like it either. They've tried every way, including going to court. And they know the path forward for how to change this, and they're working on it. But if you want to tack that on as a legislative agenda item, you should.
I don't know if it needs to be legislated. I don't know where the right place is for it anymore. And as far as like, everyone can have their opinions, but I've been all across this country for the last year, from places that are as strict as Washington to places that literally have zero restrictions. And whatever you may see on the news or whatever numbers are thrown out there, the everyday situations, interactions with people are no different in either place.
We've got to work with these people too. And when we're throwing that out there, and I'm with you on that, but when we're throwing that out there as our legislative agenda, and we understand it's not going to change anything because the majority party isn't going to kowtow to the city of Yelm. Just to be real with it. I think we're just unnecessarily poking the bear, and it might not, but it could jeopardize some of our projects as well, especially since it's the majority party that's going to be deciding ultimately what's funded and not.
My apologies. I didn't actually mean for it to be like, obviously that it's not higher priority than getting the water plant done. It's not, as far as the city as the entity is concerned, it's not more important than I don't know if what I meant was to put it on this list. It's just, I'm just at a loss for now. That's all.
Terry, then Holly.
Okay, I just wanted to say my vote. Priority number 1 is number 2. Priority number 2 is the membrane. Priority number 3 is the trail. And priority number 4 is number 1, whatever that is, the military thing. That would be my order of priority.
Okay, Holly.
I'm unmuted. James, I was just going to say that, yeah, I don't think it should be on here, but I do think that if you feel strongly like I do, just continue to write to your representatives, in a professional way. Let them know, just let them hear your voice. That was it.
Oh, thank you, Holly. All right, Michael will write that up. This because of the robust discussion that's been had tonight, I could view this easily going forward. Council, if you had an opportunity to speak to a legislator between now and the 14th, these topics would rise to the top of that conversation. Clearly, you can formalize it a little bit better on the 14th and put it in writing, make it part of the record. And that has a little bit of weight to it as well when you take that action. So, hey, we've gone a little over 2 hours. I want to make sure everybody stays healthy. If you need to, are people in the mind that they would like to get up and stretch for 2 minutes? Or Terry says yes. I think it might be a healthy thing. We'll keep the cameras rolling. Let's go for about 3 minutes, if that's fast enough to use get the coffee balance going. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Mossman Phase 2 contract introduction.
Hopefully Pat's still awake on us, so I can.
Well, I'm awake, but I've been staring at this computer screen going on 13 hours straight. So
I was worried about you. I was like, should I call Pat to make sure he's still okay and ready to go?
I won't lie to you. I won't lie to you. I did put my head down on the desk for a while.
Hey, Cody,
Yes, Kathy.
meeting is still streaming,
Yep.
just so you know, it did not pause. Okay.
Yep, you're good.
That's fine.
We're
We're being
human.
professional on
Yeah,
here.
we are human. Thank you, though, Kathy.
That's it.
Good reminder, though.
I like the way the mayor put it, a coffee exchange that.
Make a screen, that share your screen with a message that says, on a 3-minute break, we'll resume at 8:18. 8:18.
Okay, why can you give us share screen privileges, Pat and I?
Everybody should have share
Oh,
screen now.
I do. I got it. Okay. It's really cold at this park. I've been here for like 2.5 hours.
I like the way the light is coming out of your head.
Yeah.
Kind of want to play some elevator music.
Is that Sugar Ray?
Yeah. It's for those viewers, they don't want total silence. Let me know if that's too loud though. Oh, switched it. Some country. Oh, some George Strait. I don't like George Strait. I'm getting a request now. Smash Mouth. I think break's over.
Break's over. And we'll wait for people to come back in.
My name is spelled wrong.
Don't you spell it though?
I guess I did.
You got an extra vowel in there.
I do. Come in.
I fixed it for you.
Oh, you did? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, I'm here. I've got the video off to conserve power for a second. I'm grabbing a cord.
All right. Let's see. It looks like most people are back up. If not on video, they're up. I want to thank our stalwart citizens, Debbie, Kim, and Stephanie, for staying with this rather long study session. Hope it's been informative to you as it has been to us. So we will proceed now with our agenda. And we're going to introduce Pat Hughes to talk about the Mosman Avenue Phase 2 contract.
Thank you, Mayor Foster, and good evening, Council. Actually, I've got a double feature for you tonight. I've got two projects that are going to be coming your way. on the agenda next Tuesday night. The first is the Mosman Avenue Phase 2 project. This is a project that's been a long time coming. Believe it or not, we are about to embark on our 9th year in the planning and development of this project, and I am so glad to be able to finally get to the point of moving into the construction phase. So Tuesday night, you'll be getting a contract for Barcott Construction. You may be familiar with Barcott Construction. They completed our Mill Road sidewalk project here about a year and a half ago, and they are just completing phase 1 of our new dog park. And we've been working with them, so we know them well. They were fortunate enough to be the low bidder on this project. We took bids on the 19th of November, and I received 16 bids on this project, and they were the low. And so we are planning to award the construction of Mosman Avenue Phase 2 to Barcott Construction. The contract that you'll be receiving is actually a very short contract. It's a local agency contract, standard WSDOT form. So it will be very simple in nature, but it refers to all the contract plan specifications and the contract documents. So
It seems like Joe has an important question to ask you.
And it was just relevant at the time. Is 16 a lot for bids? Is that,
I was pleasantly surprised.
is that more than you normally see though, Pat?
Yeah, especially in this bidding atmosphere. Part of it has to do is we pick this time of year to bid the project because this is when time where contractors are hungry. They're looking for work and they're looking to line up things for the new year. So apparently we won on that. And then the project that I'm about to introduce, the same thing happened. So bids on this were very, very tight. And you'll see that in your packet Tuesday night. I'm putting the actual bid tab in there for you to see. The other project that I wanted to introduce to you, which will also be on your agenda packet next Tuesday night, is the reconstruction of our downtown Wells treatment facility. This is the building that's located right underneath the historic water tower. The building is in pretty bad shape. It needs to be rebuilt, but there's a number of components in there we talked about previously that need to be upgraded. Such things as our caustic soda storage tank. We want to convert from a chlorine liquid treatment system, from a chlorine gas treatment system to a liquid, much safer, much more efficient process, but we need more room for that. So we're planning to reconfigure and rebuild that small building there that's underneath the historic water tower downtown on 2nd Street. We did take bids for that as well here on the 23rd of November. I was hoping we would get more than one bid on it. We got 5. And the lowest responsive bidder was Pease and Sons out of Tacoma. I've been in discussion with them. They're ready to get started on it, and so are we, because we want to get this project built as quickly as possible. It's tied to our water rights, and we need to get this project done. So I'll be bringing both of these contracts to you next Tuesday night. I'll be able to provide a little bit more detail and allow you a chance to ask more questions about them if you want. Both of these contracts also have the inspection component in. Our engineer for the Mosman Avenue Phase 2 project, which is Gray and Osborne, will be continuing their services for the on-site inspection, coordination, testing, material certification, that kind of thing. This is all required because we do have federal funding on this project. On the downtown Wells treatment facility, our engineer, RH2, will be providing inspection services for that too. Because of the highly technical components that are involved, we want to make sure that what we want is what's getting built and correct. So that's really all I wanted to bring to you tonight. I just wanted to introduce both of these projects to you. I'll be having them on the agenda. But for tonight, is there anything anybody has questions on?
Josh has one.
Can you just refresh my memory? What are we doing on Mosman?
I have a photo here. If it is of any help to you, I could try to share my screen here and see if that would help.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think I have that one there. Let me see how good I am at sharing. You can see that?
Yep. Well, it's coming up. Here it is. Yep.
Yeah, there's what I did here is I just overlaid some drawings on top of an aerial photograph. You'll see that on the far, this is Mosman Avenue running east and west across the page. Longmire Street is on the left-hand side running north and south, and Rice Street is on the right-hand side. You'll see that we're going to be extending Mosman Avenue, curving it away from its existing alignment across a portion of the Tahoma Valley Golf Course and teeing into Longmire. There's a building there right at the corner of Longmire and the new project. That's their existing maintenance facility. That building, we have purchased it. We've purchased all the property on which this alignment is going to be going. And that building is now vacant and ready to be demolished. That's part of the construction documents. So that's just kind of a quick view of what the new alignment will look like. Anybody have anything else on either of these projects? Again, I mentioned that Mosman Avenue is partially funded by a federal grant. Approximately 1/2 of the construction contract will be covered by a federal grant. The remainder of it will come from our capital road improvement fund. The water project, the downtown Wells building, will be funded entirely from our water capital improvement fund. With that, unless anybody has any other questions, how do you like that for a nice short agenda item?
Thank you for waiting 2 hours and 25 minutes to present it.
That's fine. I'll have more for you next week.
Okay. Then we'll go right into the water system plan updates. Cody?
Yeah. So this is very timely. As council knows, we've been waiting on water rights for quite a while. We should be hearing something back this month. But with that, our water system plan has been started. Council decided it wasn't the best idea to start that water system plan in anticipation for water rights. So I just wanted some clarification because I get a lot of calls and questions from just builders and other things wondering, is it gonna be a light switch that flips on when the water rights come or what's gonna happen? So I wanted to explain what the water system plan does and kind of where we are for connections. So I'm going to share my screen and you should be able to see a very simple chart. Everybody can see that?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, I'm seeing shaking. So if you look at this chart, you'll kind of see so it's broken down into ERUs for you, which are residential units. One single family home uses 1 ERU, apartments use 0.75, other buildings commercial might use more. I just wanted to break this down to kind of show you what the water system plan will do and what water rights will do when they come online. So you'll see a couple of abbreviations here. WFI stands for Water Facilities Inventory, and those are the ERUs were granted by the state. And then the current is how many we're currently using. And then WUE is water use efficiency. So we get a certain amount of ERUs based on how efficient our citizens are and how efficient our system is at, using that water. So over the years, very good. Grant Beck and several other people have been very good about conserving water through different means. And so we've gotten more ERUs, even though our total number of acre feet we can pump per year hasn't increased. So if you look on here, the 2019 WIF approved is how many ERUs we currently have, 4,241. The number 8, the current number of customers we have is 4,063. So you see a delta of about 178, if my math is correct, which it is. So you'll see, so that how many connections we have at the start of this year. We've used, you've seen the ERU reports that have come out from the Kathy Lindemeyer and the customer support team. So those are sort of floating right around 150 left connections in the ERU. With our water system plan, once that is, we can have, and you'll see on number 2, we could have up to 4,500 connections if we had the ability to do it. So once our water rights go live, those connections will jump, but you'll notice there's another limiting factor here. So Southwest Well 1A is the well up on Tahoma Boulevard, and that will be factored into our water rights. So when the water rights come online and that well is taken into account, we'll have a limit of 4,620 water rights as in number 5 you see, or ERUs. So we'll have roughly about 400, connections more than we have now. So it's not just like a floodgate where we have every single connection that we got from those water rights. What we need to do, and what you'll see coming to you in early next year, is a Southeast reservoir. And you'll see number 6 on there talks about the Southeast reservoir. And that is how many connections we will have with the Southeast reservoir built. So I just wanted to tell you guys and talk to you and show you a little bit. Hang on, my child just ran in here and is attacking me. So it's his bedtime. So I just wanted to show you how many connections we'll get and what kind of factors are playing into limiting those connections. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Joe, go ahead.
Thanks,
Cody, can you just call on people as you see them come up?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Councilmember DePino.
Thank you. So Cody, do you know when the next time you're going to chat? And I sorry if I missed that. When you're going to chat and find that if we're good or not?
We should be hearing something in the next few weeks. We were told we would hear something the first week of December. I'm hoping we hear something this week, but it is ecology and Department of Health. So I don't hold anything to water that they say, but I think we should hear something this month. And that's what we've been guaranteed and told.
Guaranteed?
We've been told we should hear something this month. They didn't stamp it. They didn't give us a stamp, but they did say that.
Right.
So, Councilmember Kaminsky.
So as soon as we get that, then the Tahoma Terra builders will be able to proceed with their permits, right?
Yeah. So what this will allow us to do is we could actually start giving building permits for homes, knowing that more connections will be available, because we are required to keep a certain amount of connections for a school district and other essential services. This will allow us to actually start issuing building permits for buildings like Tahoma Terra and other developments that are going on right now.
As well as businesses too.
Correct. 100% correct. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, but this was just a snapshot to kind of show you where we're at, and that it's not just a switch flip when water rights come in. There's still a couple other things council will have to do, but we wanted to make you aware of this so you kind of know where we're at.
Thanks for the presentation, Cody. Go put your kid to bed.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the end of our agenda items. Thank you for sticking with us here. We've got mayor's report and council member initiatives. Very briefly, and this may come up as a report from several of the council members, but I did want to just report out that the Association of Washington Cities sent out a little report and highlight was that there were 515 newly elected officials on the state of Washington at this last election cycle, which is almost twice as many as a normal election cycle. 400 of them showed up on Saturday for the day-long elected officials essentials class, and I believe Terry, Holly, and Josh all joined in on that. I hope it was as useful to you as it had been to me in the past. Terry, this would have been at least your second time taking it.
Yes, I barely remember the first time, but it was very good.
Yeah, they get, I'll get to that, Michael. Thank you for the reminder. They have great speakers like Steve DiGiulio and Ann McFarlane. And just so you know, in January, the new council members will receive a packet from AWC that has a whole bunch of stuff in it. It'll be delivered to City Hall address, but it's got things like the Mayor Council Member Handbook, not the City of Yelm's Mayor Council Handbook, but the State of Washington's, that give you some basic legal guidelines for the state, county, and city. And then some opportunities for you to attend things like City Action Days, which is really, speaking of our legislative agenda, great opportunity to go downtown Olympia, listen to some great presentations there at AWC headquarters is where they usually have it, and then go have a one-on-one meeting with your representatives. And council members are all welcome to do that. It's a great opportunity for you to talk Yelm. And so, Michael, I was in such a hurry, I'm sorry, but we did have one more agenda item that I missed. This might be quick as well. Councilmember Crossman asked at the last meeting if you would all have a discussion about how you intend to go forward with filling the vacated seat left behind when Molly left. You have 90 days from the date of vacation, which was December 1st. So you have until February to actually take action on that. And of course, you will have another council seat open January 1st as Councilmember Pinto leaves that seat behind. So up to you to have a discussion on how you want to go forward. And I see James's hands first.
I don't have any interest in filling that prior to January.
Okay, Joe?
I'm with James. I don't think we should be filling it right now. But I do think that we should discuss the process in which we're going to do it. At the very least, let folks know, because as JW says, we already have 2 seats open. It makes sense to me to do them at the same time. Have the same applicant pool for both. That way we get the most as we can, as good applicants. But we should probably discuss how we want to go move forward with it. Yeah, I agree with James that we shouldn't be actually doing it. I mean, if you're looking at the schedule for next year, or in January, we're going to have 2 meetings. We should be able to hopefully come to consensus, maybe even by this next meeting, who knows, on the process, but even not on this one, at the very minimum, at our first city council meeting, come up with a process and have it hopefully before the second meeting of January. So that gives us, some wiggle room too if things just go poorly. But I'd be fine with discussing the process, but not actually assigning until most seats can be filled on January 1.
Josh?
Yeah, we can't fill it. We don't have the applicants yet to do that, but we do need to get that ball rolling. We need to get those, the word out there. It's like, hey, we need people to apply. We have these 2 positions, and let's get them done in January would be my preference of getting them filled so we can hit the new year running hard with a full council.
James?
I was just gonna say, I think we should definitely start taking applications. I should have made that clear. I just didn't want to rush any process of appointing anyone prior to January. But yeah, as far as opening it up and starting to accept applications, I mean, that process I assume is already in place. So I think we should open that up, start getting applications for it. But beyond that, yeah, let's hammer out how we're going to actually go about it for sure.
The staff is prepared to make that announcement in the newspaper and put out the same process that we'd used before to fill the previous positions. If the council is comfortable with that process, they don't have to put an end date on when applications need to be in. They can just open up the process and see what kind of attention you get from folks.
I think there should be an end date though on it. We should be pretty clear on the process, because that's one of my complaints. And I know a few of the other council members that have been appointed or not been appointed, was the lack of process. Basically, let them know what to expect, when to expect it, when the council like that. At the very least, I think we should put an end date on it. Like I think Councilman Crossman was talking about in the very beginning of January. That makes sense. I don't know if on January 1 would make sense, but maybe that first coming study session or first coming city council meeting around that time, have a deadline. I'd be for that, like maybe the, I don't know, 3rd of January. I don't know, 4th of January, probably be the earliest that I'd push for.
So before I raise the hands, I'll act on Joe's suggestion there in that if it's advertised next week, which is easy to do, you could put an end date of January 7th, which would then give you all the applications in time to have a discussion at the January 11th council meeting, which would be the first regular business meeting of the council. Gives about 3 weeks for people, almost 4 weeks to get their stuff in. Just keep that in mind. Tracy, then James.
Just a clarification. We didn't all agree on the process to appoint council members, but the majority did agree. Just clarifying that this wasn't a big, it was a discussion, and there were some other perspective and ideas, drawing names out of hats kind of thing. But we did, as a council, come to a consensus. The majority ruled, and we made the decision to move forward in the process in which we decided to go forward with. That's just the clarification I was making. Thanks.
James?
Just to make sure I'm understanding, we do not have a study session on January 4th.
You sure do.
Okay. I would think we should make the deadline January 3rd. That way during the study session, we can review them and have discussion amongst ourselves, and then get the interviews process to be that first business meeting on the 11th.
That would give people 3 weeks to see the application and fill it out and send it in.
I think that's plenty of time. I would say a lot of the people that are interested in this have already been paying attention to it and are waiting for it. And I would think so anyway. But even if anyone has not been paying attention to it and would be interested, 3-week time period, and there's gonna be a lot of chatter on social media and everything. I think that's plenty of time for someone to get their application in.
Joe?
Yeah, and honestly, this is going to be if we do, and I know it's scheduled for a study session on that first, or excuse me, on the 4th. It's going to be a busy meeting if we do have it on there. It's going to be a lot of learning, and I know as mayor, it's going to be for me. I want to make sure that the council has all the opportunities to know what they're doing first before appointing as well, including having all their trainings and all that stuff done. So I anticipate having that. At least for my recommendation as the incoming mayor, that we would have a lot of those like parliamentary procedure type things, some of the basic things that we should know as a council before we can move forward with deciding a new council member. But we could absolutely discuss that, and including the process too, if we want to have a study session or not, that one.
So, and for clarification, the calendar date is, you really don't have to have them seated until March 1st. You have all of December, January, and February to make this decision. Asking folks to fill out an application, get it in by that first study session in January. You would then see what kind of a pool you have. You could develop a process, and then you don't have to set a specific time until then on when you're going to make your decision. So plenty of time for that. Josh?
Yeah, I would like to see the application turned in by the 3rd, so we can discuss on the 4th, not vote for it on the 4th, but have that discussion, see what that pool is like. And then either, have that vote on either the first or the second council meeting.
Okay. James, then Terry?
If for some reason by the 3rd, there wasn't very many people, we could extend it out more time, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. So for me, I think setting the date for the 3rd for now makes sense. That way we know who's all interested, we know what the candidate pool is. And if for some reason there's not as very many people, then we extend it out another week and make a big push to make sure everyone knows about it.
There you go. Terry?
I was going to say, given that you've got 2 holidays, Christmas time and all that stuff, why don't we push it out a couple of weeks toward the end of January, since there's no hurry?
Well, I mean, there's a hurry. I mean, yeah, Mayor Foster is correct. We don't have to, assign until March. But we're also going to be a council member short with potentially a 3-3 vote where you're anticipating the mayor to break that tie. So yeah, I mean, I could do that, absolutely. But I think when Councilmember Crossman talked about it for the need to hurry up on it, I mean, I think that's part of the reasoning. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean, there is a sense of urgency as well. While it does provide a long time for us to do it, we're also doing this a council member short. a different perspective from a different perspective from another council member. There's a lot of lost in that as well. So, I mean, just two sides of the sword.
You would actually be 2 council members short for the first so that could actually, although there's no major business things that you have to attend to in the first month, but it would be wise to have a full council earlier than later. Holly?
I just wanted to say, I agree with James that I think the people that are interested, they're already ready to go. And I do think that we need, I know the holidays, it's a tough time, but I think the people that are really interested are ready to go. So, are ready to put in their applications.
Pretty easy to feel the consensus in the room, the Zoom room. I can direct staff to initiate the advertising process. And Kathy, you good with that? I know she is.
We'll get the advertisements out right away.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks for bringing that subject up, Josh. Okay, that was all I had for an update from me. Let's go ahead and let's see, where do I start? Let's start with Josh. You're at the top of my screen. What kind of initiatives do you want to bring before council tonight?
Initiatives. That's my first study session. I guess nothing that can't wait till we got full council. So
everyone's glad to hear that right now.
It's late. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas, but we're adding 2 more bodies to this, so that's going to change the dynamic a little bit. So there's a couple big things that I have thinking in my head. So we'll just wait and
very good
on that. So other than that, been having fun doing stuff.
All right, good. James?
Nada.
Holly?
Just one thing, I want to see us get back into chambers next year with a choice. That's all I got.
Okay. Tracy?
No, just thanks for the years, guys. This is the last study session you'll see me at, or at least as a council member, I should clarify.
Oh,
you can apply again.
Yeah, thanks for all the memories, guys.
But we'll see you on the 14th, yeah?
Yeah, you'll see me, but that won't be that won't be a study session. And I'm hopeful that in the future you guys sit down and discuss maybe the possibility of not recording these things. And the reason I say that is because back prior to these, I know that we had a heck of a lot more. We were a lot more productive, because people weren't concerned about the reaction people were going to have on social media about some of the things that in the passion that was used and perspectives that were brought forth. And one of the great things was, and I hope you guys continue this, is after we left, after everybody got their point across and represented the folks in this community that they represented, we all walked away and got along. Nobody was mad at anybody. Nobody hated anybody. Nobody took it personal. And, that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about a lot of the council over the years, is we were able to successfully do that. And that's one thing that I have to attribute that we've lost in that area, is the ability to speak candidly amongst each other and, without the unfortunate repercussions of social media for those that are out there that may not agree with perspectives or visions or views. So with that being said, it's been a great run, and it's for me, it's a break and a time to reevaluate where it is I want to go from here. And because just like most of you, I believe we all have a passion and a desire to help out our communities in the world that we live in on whatever scale it is that we're allowed to do so. So thanks again, and let's rock and roll, people.
Thanks, Tracy. Joe?
Thanks, Mayor. The only thing I got is, I talked to a couple council members about it, and council member elects, having a council retreat. I think it's really important that we have that right off the bat. And talking with a few of you, Saturday, January 22nd seems to be a good date. It's well over a month from today. It's a Saturday. I'd hopefully like to do it as an overnight. But we need to have a council retreat though. And I know a lot of you feel the same way. We need to not only get on the same page, it's a good team building experience as well. And also give us a good direction of where we want to go as a council and as a city. So I'd like for folks to start hopefully clearing that day, January 22nd. It's a Saturday. And I'll talk more about it here in upcoming weeks and as I take over as mayor on January 1.
Sounds like a save the date notice. So people get back to Joe and see if that's gonna work. James is writing secret messages to hold up to the camera. And while he's doing that, go to Josh.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, set the priorities and stuff, but I would like to see a full council when we do that. So if we don't have full council selected by that date, you know, we may want to push that date out just so we can have
That's a
everybody
good
on
point.
board.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I actually didn't think about that. Good perspective, Councilmember Crossman. Hopefully we can have a council by then, but if not, yeah, then we'd probably have to push it back. That's a good idea though. Makes sense.
James, I thought your sign said vegan at first. I didn't know that it was backwards in the camera. James is recommending Vegas for your overnight location.
I don't know about that. I mean, I love Vegas, but I don't know if the taxpayers of Yelm would probably appreciate that too much.
Probably not.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, Terry.
Trying to write that backwards was not easy.
I thought there were a bunch of us, but maybe it's just me. I got this email for my swearing in on December 29th via Zoom. Does that sound right? Yeah, that's how they're gonna do it now? Can't you swear me in, anybody here?
I don't know if it's the 29th, but
No, so Terry, I talked to Kathy, I believe, about it, and she said that and Kathy, please correct me if I'm wrong, that I guess in the past, council members have been sworn in on the first meeting in January and generally not with the big group on the 29th. So I'm going to decline. Did I get that right, Kathy?
Yes, you have the option of being sworn in at the ceremony with the county, and you can do that if you'd like to, or you can do it here. We can do it the first meeting of January, or you can do it up to 10 days before you take office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. So I'll just wait for that.
so
And then, yeah, I just
Terry,
wanted to say,
sorry, just go off that. Like I've gone in the past, I've done it with the county, and I know there's a few other council members that have too. That is an option. If we do it, I'll be sworn in by then. So I'd be happy to swear in the council if that's the way you want to do it.
at our first meeting in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that. And then I just wanted to say, Tracy, it's been an honor to serve with you. And JW, a triple honor to serve under your command. And you'll be both dearly missed by me. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Terry. I do hope you all remember we have a meeting on the 14th, though.
Oh, okay. All right, never mind.
Got a fairly important thing called the budget amendment to get passed before you go on Christmas break. Be kind of important. Otherwise, that first meeting in January is you're gonna have some problems.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that, Terry. Appreciate the sentiment.
You're welcome.
Okay. I believe that takes us to the end. I do want, it's important for me to end this. I want this to be a positive thing. However, it does end up sounding a little bit negative. It's been brought to my attention that some folks on the council are engaging in conversations in social media about things that involve the city and not necessarily with accurate information. Especially if you're new to the council. If you have questions about how things are being done, especially on the executive side of the government, please take a moment to call me or Michael or perhaps the city clerk and get some clarification on the history of these issues before engaging in public discourse. I think that would be helpful and respectful to everybody involved in this endeavor. So thank you for that. And we don't officially adjourn these meetings, but I think we can all say we're ready. Yeah, okay. Is that peace out, James? Is that what that means? All right, see y'all later. Thank you, staff, for your long support for tonight.
Go Hawks.